question. So, I mentioned a couple nonprofit boards that you're serving on. How many is it really that you actually are serving on today?
So I am on 8 boards or commissions right now. Currently, I just stepped off of one. As you can tell, I have a problem saying no, particularly when friends ask. I I don't include a committee. They asked me to be on a nominating governance committee, and I said I'm happy to be on the committee, but I can't be considered for a board spot. So actually, yesterday, again, if you're listening to this later, this isn't really relevant, but yesterday I chaired 2 board commission meetings, one in the beginning of the day, one at the end of the day. So it was a long board service day.
My goodness, I had a season in my life where I couldn't say no to board opportunities, and at one point I was running our nonprofit as well as being on 6 different boards, and
Uh,
it was exhausting. I couldn't imagine 8. That's a lot of pull. Yeah.
well, if you have any advice, let me know. I'm dedicated to each of the causes that I'm with. Um, I just termed off as chair of one. I'll still be on that commission for another year. But as some of these sort of the lifespan terms off, then I'll find other ways to be involved. Potentially not in a board role, but they're really important. I mean, you highlighted some of them that are really important to me, like the AFP board, the Commission on Volunteer Service, which is really helpful to me. I've always thought about board service from the lens of a fundraiser. So I really wanted to understand how boards make decisions and how I can be helpful to the board that I'm working in or with. And so I've really found that to be helpful in sitting at the other side of the table, understanding how are grants distributed, how do board meetings work, and so I honestly would encourage, maybe not to the same degree as you of or me with 6 or 8 boards, but every person working in a nonprofit should also seek to serve on a board, if just for professional development reasons, to understand kind of the process that people go through.
Absolutely. Talk about professional development. During that season, I was sitting on so many boards. I said to my wife, Michelle, and like after a while, you're dealing with the same questions and dealing
Yeah.
with some of the same issues. And I says, I'm getting a little bored being on boards. And she goes, well, why don't you try the next year to be on every single level of the board? And
Mm,
so I took the 6 and I stepped my toe. One, I was a treasurer, another one, I was a secretary, another one, I was just a trustee, vice president, and then president of my own board. So, by the time we're done with a year, I had some variety coming in. It wasn't as boring, but I backed off in my 40s. I was able to get down to just 4 boards, and that was nice. So,
nice. That's what
what
I aspire to do at some point.
what do you consider to be foundation principles needed to have a well-structured board?
So I appreciate that question because I think a lot of nonprofits ask that question. They struggle with finding kind of what's the right approach to forming a board or building a board or expanding a board. And the reality is that there's no, and we'll come back to this several times, I'm sure, as we talk through this through different aspects. But there's really no one size fits all approach to boards and board dynamics. One of the challenges with the current thinking around a board matrix is you want someone in specific different fields, right? You want someone in law, you want someone in fundraising, you want someone in facilities or operations. And the challenge is that that doesn't take into account a whole host of other factors. Let's bracket for a moment the important element of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and think about how if you have visionary leaders that are all coming to the same table, and you are a nonprofit that requires an operational board, those pieces are not going to work well together. So, from my vantage point, a good board makeup starts with the type of nonprofit you are and the type of board that you have. So, Les McEwen wrote a book called Predictable Success. In that, he talks about the life cycle of organizations. I teach this all the time when I work with clients and do webinars on it. But what I love about it and why I teach Les's system is because it fits pro forma against every nonprofit I've ever worked in. And there is this life cycle that then impacts what is the right type of board. Some organizations, particularly often small, mid-sized nonprofits, need a more operational board where they're actually out doing the fundraising, for example. Whereas once you get into a not necessarily larger organization, but a more seasoned one, a more complex one, you have staff that are doing the fundraising, and we don't want the board members off doing whatever they want with regard to fundraising. We've got to make sure that those efforts are coordinated, if that makes sense. So it really is about adapting those pieces together. And I've told Kevin Foyle, the current chair of the AFP, that I'm the chair of other boards. I'm just a board member at AFP, but it is my favorite board to be on because Kevin and the staff there do such a great job when it comes to board engagement, really making sure that from the board meeting perspective, the agendas are well done. The meetings are actually fruitful. You don't get bored in the meetings. You're not kind of phoning it in. Even when we are on the phone or on Zoom, we're engaged. We're asked to participate. And it's a meaningful discussion. I think there are times on any board where if you're a governance board, you slip into operations or management a little too much, and we need to keep that top of mind if we're a governance board. But it's really important to kind of match roles and responsibilities of board members to the needs of the organization and make sure that people are being held accountable to do the work that they're supposed to do. That it's not just a vanity position or whatever. I have no interest in being on a board to be on a board, to be listed on a website somewhere, or I don't need any more meetings in my life. I'm sure you get that as well, right? So it's, how can I add value? How can I make a meaningful contribution to this board? And I think a lot of other board members feel the same way.
One of the, I think, most effective and healthy boards I ever observed. Now, it had to do also with the type of institution it was and their mission. But my son, who lives in San Diego, he attends a church. It's got about 2,000 members. Mm-hmm. They are 80% under the age of 45. So wow. It's a younger congregation. And their pastor, when we went down to visit, he asked if he could sit down with me, and we got a chance just to, go out for a meal, my wife and I, and he and his wife. And I asked them about, their board setup, because my son had dropped something in my ear. And he said that once a year, their congregation votes for almost every single board position. But that board position, you serve the first year, and then you mentor the next person in line the second year, and then you can't run again for 5 more years. But what it does is it transitions. Now, they are a community-based organization, right, as a nonprofit. It brings in, sometimes they have college students on their board, right? Sure. Sometimes they have the most inexperienced people on their board, but they are a great representation of who the congregation trusts and says, sure, this person really is who we think is a healthy person to represent us and make decisions for the direction that the church is going in. Mm-hmm. As a result, he said that he has had such a stickability of the younger people because they feel like they have a voice in the process, sure, and they do, because they'll bring initiatives, they get voted on by the group, and things move forward. Mm-hmm. And I really like that because I did not have experience in my younger years of always seeing really the seniors within the organizations calling all the shots. And there was no sense of voice, just responsibility. Absolutely. And yet I saw in this organization quite the opposite, in fact. And I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Have you had a chance to hear more about how that process works and how that mentorship element is designed? Because I think that'd be really helpful for a lot of.
The first thing it does is it creates multiple generations of friends. Because sometimes you'll have a woman who served for a year, 45-year-old woman, and the next person that comes in is some skateboarder from college that has had this great relationship and helped out and served, and the people in that part of the congregation trust them, said, yeah, we want to, you're giving you our votes to go represent us on the board.
Mm,
And now they're mentoring each other. And it creates this multi-generational depth and relationship because they become friends. There's
yeah.
this engagement. And also it takes away a lot of the sense of rights. We really feel as a society here in America, I have this, right to be heard, but now it takes away from we are being heard. And we have a way of accessing decision making for everyone in the organization.
Hmm. So it sounds like there's a cultural dynamic there that definitely infuses among those generational, like the older folks. Not that 45 is old, but those people that are older than the skateboarder are really respectful and empowering of those younger generations.
Yep.
Whereas
Yep.
a lot of nonprofits that I see, they'll have someone there, but it's sort of tokenism, whether that's a generational piece or another element of diversity, right?
Yep.
So that's really great to hear.
Yep. The interesting thing is the senior pastor is in his mid 50s.
Mm.
His right hand man is older than him. So you end up with usually you attract people, no matter what nonprofit you are in, people that come and volunteer and really draw to you are either 10 years younger or 10 years older than you. But the way they've approached this has allowed them to continually bring in a part of the community that usually doesn't attend church on a regular basis, especially not committed.
Mm.
And I just like 2 thumbs up. It's
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah, that's a great model for certainly for churches because it's just wise counsel, but for other nonprofits to kind of figure out how to crack that nut and build that that cultural model and then that mentorship model